so here we are. I have to tell you, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to start this year's program. I'm so excited about it. We are, this came to me with a group of people that I've worked with very closely, and I was having a meeting with somebody talking about education, and we were visioning for what's to come. This was about, about 5 or 6 months ago. And she presented me with this sheet of beautiful pictures with qualities of God on them, and there were 12 of them. And I looked at this gorgeous piece of paper, and I saw the totality of the divine blessing. I saw the allness of God in that, and there was this moment. I don't have these moments very often, but there was this moment where I felt like I could see, like I was blind and I could see, and this whole program popped out of my head onto the sheet. And I could see the whole path of the year. I could see what we were headed for. I could see all the different things we could do around it. And I got really excited, and then I got really scared because it was really big. And I was going to have to create it. And I was like, oh God. And then I remembered in my oh God moment, okay, I don't have to do anything. If this popped out of my head completely, it's the divine gift. And so I'm just going to let God create it. And so what happened then was we got back together and started to create the path of this year and set it up, and I'm so excited about it. So our year this year is the journey of your spirit, walking the path of a spiritual life. And so our intention with this theme this year is to look at 12 different and distinct qualities of the divine and see how we can find first a deeper understanding of them, what they really mean. Because I think sometimes when we talk about spiritual stuff, it's kind of like, oh yeah, faith, great. Well, what does it really mean to have these concepts alive in our lives? And second is ways to incorporate them into our daily living. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, says in The Science of Mind, when we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy, prosperous, and well. Happy, prosperous, and well. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah, I think we should start trusting the universe a little bit sooner than later. Let's not wait for that. Happiness, prosperity, and wellness. Let's take a year here and focus on how we can step into that experience. Because I know that it's there for each of us, but there's something that gets in the way. There's something that gets in the way of allowing the universe to bring all of those things into our experience. You know what that is? It's us. We get in our own way. There's nothing outside of us that gets in our way. We get in our own way of blocking that infinite blessing that is trying to pour itself forth to us and through us and as us and give us all of these things that we want. We're the ones who are limiting it, who are blocking it. And so this year it's our goal to let go of that, to surrender anything, any resistance, any fear, any sense of limitation, any belief in any less than anything, so that we can really accept the divine gift and live this life fully like we were intended. And so, looking at spiritual principles and how life works for an understanding of it is one thing. It's great to have new realizations. It's great to awaken to a greater comprehension of what it means to live a spiritual life, but that's good. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. That's kind of the level that we do. We kind of come to church and we listen. Hopefully you listen to what I have to say. Hopefully you find it a little inspirational, or I'm hoping. Or you wouldn't come back. That's my idea on it, but that's another story. But the second thing is how we can make it real and relevant in our world, right? How we can put these things into practice to make a difference when you are in your home by yourself getting a phone call that is difficult for you. I want you to have tools and the ability to remember this, to lean into this, and have it be something that feeds you and supports you. If this isn't, and for me, if you've been in class with me, you know this about me. If it's not real, if it's not relevant to me, if it doesn't really work, I have no time for this. I don't have any interest or time for anything that is just theoretical and maybe sounds nice, but doesn't really have any real effect for us. What I know so well in my own experience is that this philosophy changes lives, that this philosophy can transform your relationship with your life, that you can bring forth a greater understanding and acceptance of not only yourself, but you could create an experience of joy, of all of those deep desires that are alive in your heart that you might not even allow yourself to know that you want them. There is such power in aligning ourselves with life in the way that the science of mind teaches us. I have seen it transform people's lives. I have seen them heal illness. I have seen them create possibility and potential and put it into practice, create great prosperity. I have seen people have rich, deep, amazing love affairs, and then call forth all these amazing things that they want in our lives. Whatever it is that you're really desiring, when we move into that experience, you can have it. You can create it. But we need to put it into practice. I was thinking of it last night. I was trying to think of an example for this, and I came up with one. We all know that dark leafy greens are good for you, right? Right? Kale, right? We're supposed to eat kale, right? We're supposed to eat kale. And we all know that. We know that it's good for us. We know that we know a little bit about what it does. It brings us great nutrients. It cleanses our blood, I think, or something like that. It helps our liver. It does all these amazing things for us. But knowing that is not going to do anything for you. Knowing that kale is really good for you is not going to do anything for you. It's not going to help you at all. It's only when you get your butt out to the farmer's market or to the grocery store and you buy some and you figure out how to cook it or not. Raw kale eaters, God bless you. I worked my way up to raw kale, I'll tell you. But I do it. But until you get it on your plate and put it in your mouth, it's not going to make any difference for you. And it's that same thing with our spiritual principles. You can read about it all you want. You can have a great library of books, of the wisdom of the ages. You could even read them and spend time with them, or you could do what I do with it sometimes and knock them on my head, trying to get the information in another way, we could think about that, but even that, a great spiritual study is important, but it doesn't do anything for you unless you put it into practice. Unless you find a way to incorporate it into your beingness, into the way that you live and walk through your days. Our goal this year is to put this stuff into practice. I don't know if you haven't noticed that it's a little bit of a tumultuous time we're living in right now. I'm still a little shell-shocked from last year. I'm getting better, but feeling a little shell-shocked from the experience of that. And I have no opinion on what's right or wrong or what's happening. It's just a time of great change, I think. And in moments of great change, it's about being open to allowing the change and focusing on the highest desire for transformation. And so our idea this year is for us to lay out the concepts and look deeper at what it means. So at the beginning of the month, we kind of have it set up so that the beginning of the month is laying out the concepts. And then as we go through the months, it's about how to put them into practice. How to make it real for you. So that's our goal for this entire year. So we're going to begin 2018 with the divine quality of wisdom. And like many other centers, we begin this year by going what's called back to the basics. A lot of Science of Mind centers across the country are exploring the foundational teachings of the Science of Mind as outlined in the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind. And so this week, I'm looking at the first 2 chapters, which are the thing itself and the way it works. The other thing I want to mention is that this year we're marking 100 years of Science of Mind. And so the organization is doing a big program to honor that, and we're going to incorporate some of those things as we go along. But it's nice to have that marker. We've been the new religion, right? We're the new religion for so long, and 100 years, of course, some of the other religions are thousands of years. We're not going to catch up to them. But the thing I love so much about the Science of Mind is that this really is the spiritual truth that runs through all religions. The founder, Ernest Holmes, I don't talk about him too much, except for in the class I'm about to teach called The Essential Ernest Holmes. I'll talk about him a lot in that class. But what I love about what he did was this, is that he was a student of life. He loved religion. And he loved philosophy, and he loved science, he loved nature. And so he studied these things. He was a self-taught man, and he studied and read and explored. And what he did was he began to take the truths that ran through all the religions, that spiritual thread that runs through all of it, the science and the nature, and he started to see the patterns of the things that were the same in all of these different areas. And that's what the science of mind is. It's a correlation of these natural laws, of these spiritual principles that he thought not as a religion of itself, but as a philosophy of living. That if we can live this way, he imagined that people would, of all different religions, would study the science of mind and take it back into their religion of origin and enrich that and make that experience better. I see science of mind, I see religious science as a bridge, is that bridge to science and spirituality, right? There's this whole chasm, this big conversation about how science and spirituality are, separate enemies, basically, of each other, and they can't find a bridge. Well, we are the bridge to that. We are the bridge to that. We are the bridge to the religions, knowing that there's truth in all of them. There's not one right way. And anyone who tells you that there's one right way is fooling themselves. The way is the discovery of the truth of who we are, and that we all get to that place. What Ernest Holmes brought forward was also what all the mystics of the ages came forward understanding, which is that there's one presence and one power, one essence, one spirit, whatever you want to call it, that runs through all things, that makes all things alive, and we call that God. And so at the foundational level of what we're talking about, it's the same thing. It's finding a way to connect with that part of you that you know is in there, that's greater than you think you are. Ernest Holmes used to start all of his radio programs with the quote that there is a power in the universe that's greater than you are, and you can use it. And it's true. There is a gift that we are unto the world that we have come here to be. And we are animated, energized, and supported by that infinite presence. And so the first thing we do is, in this process, is that we redefine God in our lives. We're here to maybe just discover God. Maybe you've never had a relationship with the divine. Maybe you had a deep relationship as a child with your religion of origin and it doesn't work for you anymore. Maybe it's about redefining and discovering what you really believe about the divine. That's where we start. We start at the beginning, which is God. And so the place that we hold for the divine in this philosophy is that God is in, through, and as all things. That it's not the picture of the judgmental God up on the cloud, right, who gives you stuff if you're good and takes stuff away if you're bad. I call that the Santa Claus God with the white beard, the one who's keeping a tally of you, and you better be good or watch out, We don't believe in that. We don't believe in a persona of God. We believe in a presence, in a principle, in an essence and energy. It is a creative force. And you could call it what you want. There's all those words. You could call it God, spirit, life, the universe, love, Atman, Brahman, the force, whatever you want to do. We could have a day where we just all say all the words there are for God. It doesn't matter what you call it. It matters what you believe it to be and what God is to you. So the first thing that we do this year and this month is to define what God is to us. And what I encourage us to do is do that on a deep level, to feel it. It's not only the intellectual exercise, it's when you know. Where and when do you know that there's a presence, that God is real? Sometimes it's standing at the ocean for me. I go to the beach, I put my feet in the sand, and I open to that divine presence of the ocean, the enormity of the power of it. And I think of all the life that's in it, and I think of how it encircles this earth and how big it is, and I remember that there's something greater than I am. The other day I was walking through our orchard, and it's just the beginning. It's so funny. We're so blessed here. God bless everybody on the East Coast. Holy moly. Oh. So glad I moved 20 years ago. Oh my goodness, just for this storm, But God bless them. But as soon as we get Christmas done, it's the beginning. It's spring in my yard, you know? So it's like Christmas is done, we put away the Christmas decorations and I go walk out in the orchard and the blossoms are starting to bloom, you know? I'm like, oh, welcome spring, here we go, you know? But I was walking through the orchard with the dogs and I was looking at this tree that is just starting to bloom and looking at these beautiful citrus blossoms and how beautiful they smell and how amazing it is. And I just stood there and meditated with this one tiny blossom that's just the first one of the season, you know? And there was such perfection in that and such beauty in that. There's no possible way that that's a random occurrence, you know? I remember that that's God. And when I look at something that's so intricate and beautiful like that, I can't help but know that it's reflected back at me. Like that's the truth of who I am too. When I notice that divine beauty, that divine perfection, I realize that that's alive in me. There's something inside that I feel that. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I want for each of us to do, is to find the place where you know that there's a God. To find the place and go engage in that this week, so where you can remind yourself and realize that you're not alone. That there is something that loves you so much that it created you in this amazing way, and this gift to this world. Again, from the Science of Mind, this universal life and energy finds an outlet in and through all that is energized and through everything that lives. So what it does, what God does is it expresses. It expresses as us. So if you think about it, the way that we look at God is this infinite essence. It has all things. It knows all things. It has all wisdom and all knowledge. It has all power. It is present everywhere. It is in its infinite nature. So in that totality of God, it cannot know anything specific about itself. It is the allness. I'm going to blow your mind a little bit, so just trust me. All right? I'm going to lay this out. Usually I only do this in class, but where we can ask questions, but I'm going to try on a Sunday. So if you get that picture, nod if you got that picture of what God is, right? It's in this fullness. It's got all things. So it can't know any one individual thing because it's all of it. In the middle of the allness, there's only the allness, right? In the middle of infinite light, you can't know yourself as light separate from anybody else, can you? Because there's only light. Follow me? No?
Say it again.
Okay, good. Everyone's looking at me like, okay. So the idea is this: it needs to express. God wants to experience itself. It wants to know life. And so it creates these individualizations of itself to send them out to experience life. And that's us. We are each an individualization of the divine. And we are made in the image and likeness of God so that it can experience itself as life. It can experience itself as Catherine. It can experience itself as you. And as these divine humans that we are blessed because we also have consciousness. God is experiencing itself as the rock and the tree and the cloud and everything that is. But as humans, we are so blessed because we get to co-create with this divine. We're awake to it. We get to know it. We get to choose it. And the joy of that is we get to watch the creative process happen in front of us. We can see from the beginning, there's a desire. We connect with that desire or that impulse to create, to be, to do something, to have some experience. We can watch that desire come forward and then the manifestation happen and then the joy of experiencing it. That's God in action, knowing itself as life, knowing itself as you. So every single thing that happens in our life is there. Every experience we have is there so God can experience itself as us. It means you're walking a divine path. It means you're living a divine life. You are the gift of God. You are the gift of God to the world, but you are also the gift of the world to God. Because you're precious to it. Because the divine cannot experience life without you. And so as we connect to this and realize this, we get to start to awaken to the individual gift we are unto the world. And then we get to strengthen that. It's like a muscle. We get to strengthen it. We get to engage in it. We get to align ourselves with life. And so what I think happens is when we hit those rough patches, when we hit those rocky moments, when we start to get frustrated, when you notice that all your friends are putting up on Facebook something about something going retrograde, right? You know those moments? And I know it's a thing. Don't tell me later. I understand that someone's going to come and explain to me what retrograde really means. I know. But that's the feeling of it, right? When everything just seems to be off and nothing's clicking. What I think happens is that we get out of alignment with our divine flow. We've stepped out of an alignment with our life. We've either started to lean into our fears and our resistance and our worry and our limitation, and we stop allowing that divine flow to happen. And so every time we start to have those moments, we're called to wake up. Wait a minute, no, this is not the truth. The truth is divine flow. The truth of God is expression and creativity. I'm going to align myself with that, and we move our consciousness back into alignment with that divine. And then things start to shift. Again, Ernest Holmes says that it's impossible to escape the creative urge. Everything must find fulfillment or perish. Life has entered into you, and with it the irresistible impulse to create. Divine intelligence has willed it so. And so I'm not saying that each of us needs to go out and be painters or poets, or that we need to, do scrapbooking or something. It's not about that. But we are all creative in that we are open to engaging with life and giving the gifts of who we are. Everybody has an individual way of creating. Everybody has an individual way of giving your gift into the world, and I don't care if you're 2 or 202. It doesn't matter. If you are here living and breathing, you are here to create and to give of yourself to this world, and finding a way to do that in a way that touches your heart, inspires you, is what we're here for. I had an interesting experience this week. I was going to share with you that as some of you know, I've got this sweet rescue dog who got sick over the holiday. And it was funny, he got sick on the day I had our practitioner Christmas party. And Buster got sick, and he's our Beagle Basset. He's been with us we just celebrated 7 years with him, and we think he's about 7 years old. He was 7 years old at the time, so he's 14, he's getting up there. And he got pneumonia on the day of his party, so I'm like having 40 people at my house, and Buster's getting sick, and I'm trying to, it was fun. It was fun. But what happened was, it was funny for me because I got him to the bed, I got him home, and there he is in the middle of this party. And it was perfect, though, that I had a party full of practitioners because I moved him to my bedroom. And then every time, and of course that's where I threw all my stuff too, so I didn't want people in the bedroom. But every time I walked by, somebody was laying next to Buster praying over him. And it's great to have a party with practitioners because all they're going to do is pray. So then I would walk back by again to grab something else, and there's another practitioner laying down next to Buster on the floor praying over it. I'm like, okay, great. So anyway, so what happened was, that's enough of the story, but so I've been back to the vet like a number of times, and he's doing well. He's on the mend, which is great. We went back for a vet check at the end of the day the other day, and the vet was running late. And so I'm sitting there, and Fallbrook's such a sweet little town. Like, my art teacher showed up, and I always see people wherever I go. It's a sweet place. So I'm sitting in there, and we have this little group waiting to go in, and there's another pug who was also named Buster, and so they were playing, and everybody was getting better. And then all of a sudden, we were having this little conversation, and this woman walks in by herself and sits down next to me. And red eyes, and she's just sitting there, and she doesn't have her animal with her, and someone asked her, "Are you here to pick up your pet?" And she said no, he's in the car with my husband. And she just started crying. And they were there to support his transition. He was having renal failure, and so they were going to put him down. And she said, my husband can't even come in. He's in the car with the dog. He's having such a hard time with it. Now, the minister in me, I feel like I put on my Superman cape. Minister to the rescue, And we just talked to her, we talked about how brave it was to do that, that we were the caretakers of our pets, and that how courageous she was to make the choice and to hold the space when she knows that he's suffering and she doesn't want him to suffer. And so then in the middle of that, I got pulled in to check Buster out, and he got checked out, which is good, and we got some new cough medicine and all that stuff, and I was getting ready to leave, and I came back out, and I saw that another woman had come in. And she was sitting there with a cat carrier, and she was sobbing over the cat carrier, And I was just like, holy moly, I saw a whole new part of the vet's office that I had never seen before, because I usually go in the mornings. Now I know what happens in the late afternoon. So what happened was, I'm sitting there and I was talking to the nurse, are they nurses, the vet tech, and asked her, you know, is this what happens at the end of the day on Friday? She said, it happens on the end of the day every day. And I said, do you have chaplains? I was like, do you need chaplains? Because I know people, I've got people, you know, and I could help, you know. And she said, well, they usually bring their own. And so in the middle of that conversation, I could hear what was happening in the room. Was the woman who I had talked to had moved over, sitting next to the woman who was sobbing. And what she said to her was this. She said, listen, you loved that cat into life, and you're gonna love it out. And I was like, I'm not needed. There's like, I'm not needed here. This is amazing to me. And I was so moved, of course, I was so moved because she turned her pain into an understanding and a compassion for someone else. She became the gift of God. She used what her pain was into support for somebody else. And when we left, they walked in holding hands together. She walked in with her before she went to get her husband. And I was so inspired by that. How powerful it is, because that's what happens, is that there is a divine presence that is always all around us. And we may think we're alone. We may think that we're walking this path alone, but there are what we would call angels showing up. And it's God giving its gift unto the world, and we just happen to be in the matrix of it. So we are called to speak when, you know, to say what needs to be said, because I know that there are times when we are inspired to say something and sometimes we hold back. We don't want to bother someone. We don't want to intrude, right? We want to be cautious about that. Well, that's not why we're here. We're here to be the presence of God, because we are the divine hand of God. The only way that Spirit moves in this life is through us. And so there's this idea here that we are the divine, precious gift of Spirit. And I have one more reading I'm going to do with you that I love to share at the beginning of the year each year. This is from Mark Nepo in his book of Awakening. And it's January 1st. And every year I go back to it because it speaks so much to me of what we're trying to do here is to acknowledge the fact that we are precious and we are the divine gift. And so he says this. There's a Buddhist precept that asks us to be mindful of how rare it is to find ourselves in human form on earth. It is really a beautiful view of life that offers us the chance to feel enormous appreciation for the fact that we are here as individual spirits filled with consciousness, drinking water and chopping wood. It asks us to look about at the ant and the antelope, at the worm and the butterfly, at the dog and the castrated bull, at the hawk and the wild, lonely tiger, at the 100-year-old oak and the 1,000-year-old patch of ocean. It asks us to understand that no other life form has the consciousness of being that we are privileged to. It asks us to recognize that of all the endless species of plants and animals and minerals that make up the earth, a very small portion of life has the wakefulness of spirit that we call being human. That I can rise from some depth of awareness to express this to you, and that you can receive me in this instant as part of our precious human birth. You could have been an ant. I could have been an anteater. You could have been rain. I could have been a lick of salt. But we were blessed in this time, in this place, to be human beings, alive in rare ways we often take for granted. All of this to say this precious human birth is unrepeatable. So what will you do today, knowing that you are one of the rarest forms of life to ever walk the earth? How will you carry yourself? What will you do with your hands? What will you ask, and of whom? Tomorrow you could die and become an ant, and someone will be setting traps for you. But today you are precious and rare and awake. It ushers us into grateful living. It makes hesitation useless. Grateful and awake, ask what you need to know now. There is something within you that wants to live fully. There is this deep desire that's within us to be fully expressed and fully embraced in this divine matrix of life. That's God. And every time that feeling starts to come forward, that's God calling you to a deeper connection to it. So I know that as we begin this year, we go back to the beginning. And in order to go back to the beginning, we go back to God. And so the first thing that we do this year is to find that connection, to find that place where you know the Spirit is alive within you so well that there's no doubt. And whether that's standing on a mountaintop, standing before the ocean, sitting in your favorite chair with your beautiful animal friend on your lap, meditating, I don't care what it is. But my best hope for you is in this week that you connect with that, you deepen into it, and you lean into it, because that's the foundation from which we step. Everything that we create this year comes from the divine. It comes from the divine presence that you are, and I know as we deepen in that, as we lean into it, we will be prosperous, well, and free. And so it is.